Hey folks, it's Ardwulf. Welcome. This is an unboxing video brought to you post Buckeye Game Fest. So by the time this video will get posted, Buckeye Game Fest will have concluded, and you will have already seen the loot video, which will actually be filmed after this because I want to recap the whole convention there. But the primo piece of loot for me that I obtained at Buckeye Game Fest is War Between the States, 1861 to 1865, by Decision Games. Now, you might say that, Decision Games, I don't know, man. And honestly, I felt like that too when our previous game wrapped up and a bunch of people brought a bunch of different stuff over, and they're all fairly big games. And we landed on playing this, the Decision Games War Between the States. And we are now about 2-3 months into that game, and it's quite good. It is different from the other strategic level Civil War games that I have played, like U.S. Civil War and For the People. Another thing I picked up, which you'll have seen in the wrap video, is Victory Games Civil War. But there's enough games that are similar to that and I've heard so much about it that I feel qualified in saying something about it, even if that's not a real opinion. So this is Indecision's sort of 2.5-inch flat game size box, and it's essentially a second edition, a true second edition of the SPI Classic War Between the States from 1977 or something like that. So it's got some fixes, it's got some relatively minor changes, and the maps and components are obviously nicer, and also there's not a huge, giant, stupid forest in the middle of Missouri and Kansas, which there inexplicably was on the SPI version's maps. There are some additional options as well, including a very detailed optional leader system. I'm trying to get the shrink wrap off without wrecking it here. This is in the shrink wrap. Obviously, this wasn't bought from Decision. They don't have this anymore. I bought this from my buddies at Enterprise Games. I will put a link to Enterprise Games in the video description, so check them out. They are typically at Origins 2 as reps for GMT. But they are also at Buckeye Game Fest, and they've been coming for the last several years, and I'm happy to have them. So I do have some pictures of that I'll show off in the wrap video as well. So let's open her up and see an unpunched copy. The copy that we're playing is fairly beat up because our guy that owns it got it new. So we have the sort of large landscape format decision maps that come in a lot of the games in this box format. I think these are, I'm not sure if these are Joe Youst maps, Youst or Yost or Youst or whatever, but however it is, I like these maps. It does probably say somewhere. I can tell you that Irad Hardy was the original designer and is credited as the designer for this too, which makes sense because, like I said, it's pretty much the same game. So we have 3 of these, okay? So it's a large game. I think we worked out, we couldn't find a citation that said what scale the hexes were, but I think it's something like 15 miles to the hex, and their turns are weekly. You have a game response card. We have some baggies, which probably won't get used in this game. We have some counter sheets. So let's see what we have, because now I think we've got a counter sheet of units, an identical counter sheet of units, another identical counter sheet of units, and another one. So there's 4 of those. And then this sheet and a half has the leaders and stuff. Now the variant counters are the different leader system that this includes as an option. It's fairly the map footprint's not that high, but it's a relatively display heavy game, and I'll show you that in a minute here. So we have white core counters. I would say typical Decision Games thicknesses. There's a bit of a color matching problem that I don't know if you can see on the video or not, where the gray is a little darker gray than the regular ones, and the blue is a little lighter blue than the regular ones. That may be intentional thinking about it so that you can tell the two apart. So we've got 5.5 counter sheets, 4 of which are identical counter sheets, which are just the units and stuff. And we got some baggies. We've got 2 dice, 2 d6s, which is what you use in the game. They are inexplicably yellow, but I presume nobody thought of that. We have some displays. So this is the player aid card, and there should be 2 of these. And these are double-sided, and you could fold this in half, it looks like. No, you could, but it would suck. This is the primary player aid card. This is the tables that run the game. I saw somebody describe this as really table heavy, and it's really not. I mean, there's a kind of a more complicated than usual CRT, but actually that's one of the things that I found very interesting about this game is that there are really 4 different CRTs based on the battle intensity level. Different commanders can have more intense battles, right? So Grant is a more aggressive commander than McClellan, for instance, which makes perfect sense. I think it fits thematically, and in practice, I think it works quite well. There is a fair amount of die rolling, but I mean, that's not crazy by any means. We have a rule book. This is a pretty typical Decision Games rulebook of the era, relatively large print. Now, there's an updated Living Rules rulebook on the Decision Games website, a map by Joe Youst, and there is a decent amount of it, a couple pages of errata for this, including some. I think there's 1 or 2 pieces of map errata, but they're insignificant enough that I'm okay with it just ignoring them. There's some chart errata, which is irritating, including on this combat supply table. But not a huge problem, right? So we have kind of a pile of other stuff here. Now the scenario, there's no separate scenario book. The scenarios are in here, which is also not surprising. We have these 2 displays, one for the Union and one for the Confederates. And then we have 2 production spirals, which is probably not strictly necessary, but there's other stuff on the production spiral too, like these personnel point calls. So to build units, it costs supply, which you accumulate, but it also costs personnel. And when you're out of personnel, you got to like call for volunteers or have a draft or something like that, which is, again, something that happened and caused issues. And it's really pretty neat that that's in here. This is the setup card for all the scenarios. So once you have the game set up, you don't need this on the table. So I was wondering what the hell it was. I'm like, what is this? Oh, right. Okay. Now I remember. Here's the Union turn record track. It's probably not necessary to have 2 turn record tracks, but there is a bunch of info on the turn record tracks. And then you have headquarters that are like your off-map displays. I think if I fool with this game from a, sort of fussing with play aids type of standpoint, I would try to develop a better off-map display mechanism than this. Here's the Union production spiral. Like I said, there's a lot of displays here, so the footprint's decent size, even though the map's not really that big. And the Union setup card. Now we got to fold all this stuff back up. Like I said, we're about 3 months into the game here, and I liked it enough after being super lukewarm when it was pitched that I was interested in procuring a copy, and now I have it. So I am quite happy to have this. I'm not super interested in... There are things I like about the original edition's counters that I like less about this edition's counters, but those are minor, and the giant forest in the middle of the Kansas prairie is off-putting, to say the least. In addition to that, the components are pretty handsome. The counters are certainly attractive and serviceable, although nothing remarkably special. But I really like this particular map style, which I'm going to call Joe Youst's map style, since he did the maps for this game. And again, it plays very well, which surprised me, because especially when it starts out, you got weekly turns, which you have these activations, which you can't really do much. But it actually plays quite historically. As I said, I got this in the shrink wrap. Very happy with it. The box is just a little bit dished, but that's something that I can live with. As far as storage on this, I haven't the vaguest idea how I'm going to approach that. I do, actually. I just don't know if it'll work. I should be a smart guy and send Decision back this card. That would be funny. Who knows if they're still at the same address. As far as I know, they're still in Bakersfield, I can tell you that. So, War Between the States from Decision Games, designed by Irad Hardy, and a second edition. This is, again, what I would call a true second edition, where it is a modest revision of the original game, and frankly, I think improved in a number of respects from what I've seen. If you know where to find them, you can find the rules for the original online, and certainly you can see pictures of the maps and stuff like that. Without either being like a total redesign or a new design that may or may not be, necessarily any good. This is a tested game, and there's been very little talk about this. It was hard to find out about it, which is one reason I was lukewarm. I was like, well, I looked into it. There's like no talk about this in Board Game Geek. There's like 6 people who have posted ever on this game. I mean, I don't know why, because it's really pretty good. Compares very favorably to, I think, U.S. Civil War, or the Victory Games Civil War, what I imagine the Victory Games Civil War is like. Obviously, it does have a bigger footprint, significantly bigger footprint with all the displays. But again, I suspect there's a more efficient way to do that. And certainly it takes longer. The play time is substantially longer. You could play U.S. Civil War in a weekend, really, or Victory Games Civil War, from what I hear. We're at about 12 or 15 sessions on this so far, and we're in I think we just hit 1863. And it moves really fast at the beginning and moves somewhat slower once there are a lot of armies on the board and you actually have activations every turn, for example, and you're not picking a 0 chit out of the cup every time. There is a chit pull activation system. You don't pick a chit for leaders, you pick a numbered chit to determine the number of commands you can issue, and then everybody else might activate. You have to make a roll for that. So looking forward to digging into this game in depth at a future time, but I'm also very excited to have it on the shelf. So I want to thank you for watching. I will put a link to Buckeye Game Fest website in the video description as well. So check that out. If you have any questions about anything else that went on, check out the wrap video and leave me comments and questions there. Again, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.